Hi everyone, we're from Group G and today we will be going to be telling you guys about globalization of Indonesia, about their economy, political and international trade for their international business, presented by Deven Hamdja, me myself Nicholas Tjahjadikarta, Eamonn Davis, Jiang, and Junyi Chen.
So for the first question, we will be dividing the question into two parts. The first part we will be talking about how has globalization influenced the political economy of our chosen country, which is Indonesia, and the second part we will be talking about what challenges might the legal system of our chosen country present for an Australian firm considering establishing a presence in that country.
Globalization has significantly impacted Indonesia's political economy by increasing its GDP through expanded access to international markets and enhancing its export potential. By becoming more integrated into the global economy, Indonesia has taken advantage of its rich natural resources such as coal, palm oil, and minerals, along with agricultural products such as rubber, coffee, and cocoa, to boost export revenues. These exports have generated significant foreign exchange earnings, fueling economic growth, job creation, and infrastructure development. Globalization has also enabled Indonesia to diversify its trade relationship across Asia, Europe, the Americas, and Middle East, reducing dependence on any single market and providing more stability amid global economic fluctuations. This increased global engagement has enhanced Indonesia's economic competitiveness, helped develop various sectors, and strengthened the country's overall economic resilience. However, globalization has also created political challenges for Indonesia, with many people believing that it mostly benefits the wealthy, making the gap between the rich and the poor even wider. This idea is captured in the term globalization, a play on the word globalization, which means it. However, globalization has also created political challenges for Indonesia, with many people believing that it mostly benefits the wealthy, making the gap between the rich and the poor even wider. The idea is captured in the term globalization, a play on the word globalization, which compares it to a worthless rag that increases social inequality. This view highlights concerns that while globalization can boost economic growth, it may also lead to greater unfairness by allowing the rich to gain more, while poorer communities are left further behind, worsening social divisions.
To enter the Indonesian market, Australian firms must carefully review Indonesia's Negative Investment List, or DNI, to understand the restrictions and requirements affecting foreign investment. The DNI is a key policy that specifies which sectors are partially or fully closed to foreign investors or require special conditions, such as a mandatory partnerships with local entities or caps on foreign ownership. Indonesia's legal framework imposes various limits on foreign investment in specific industries, such as defense, media, healthcare, education, and natural resources, to protect national interests and promote local development. By understanding this regulation, Australian firms can identify sectors open for investment, comply with local laws, and effectively navigate the Indonesian market, ensuring they align with the country's regulatory environment and avoid potential legal challenges.
Hi, I'm Jiang. I'm going to use relevant concept and measure analyze the level of both economic development and human development in Indonesia, which measures of either economic or human development is of greatest importance to an Australian firm considering establishing a presence in their country. Economic development plays a key role in shaping how industries operate, and we can see this clearly in the model built around the Indonesian fashion company. This image shows the supply chain performance improves when the impact of Human Development Index is considered. This is because there is a strong link between HDI and GDP. As a country's HDI improves, meaning people live longer, have better education, and higher incomes, it naturally leads to boosting GDP. And as GDP grows, so does the efficiency and performance of supply chain. In simple terms, a country with a higher HDI tends to have more motivated and skilled workforce, which in turn drives stronger economic growth. When workers are healthier, better educated, and earn more, they are more productive, which leads to improvement across the economy, including in industries like fishing. So, improving HDI is not just the well-being of the people. It also has a direct impact on how well the economy performs, and in this case, supply chain operates smoothly. Human Development Index is often measured by factors like life expectancy, educational attainment, and income, typically adjusted for purchasing power parity. These elements formed the Human Development Index, which gives an overview of country's general quality of life. According to research, which combined multiple factors like education and gross national income by Kandemir and his colleagues, countries with high HDI score tend to more attractive to people looking for immigrants. For instance, the image above shows that in 2010, approximately 1.4 million Indonesians immigrated to Malaysia, largely because Malaysia had an HDI of 0.796, compared to Indonesia's much lower HDI of 0.617 at the time. In addition to Malaysia, Australia has also become a popular destination for Indonesians immigrants. World Bank data indicates a strong interest among Indonesians is moving to Australia, which has a much higher HDI than Indonesia. However, the interest is not mutual. Australians are not particularly drawn to migrating to Indonesia, mainly because Indonesia's lower HDI makes it less appealing. So, when companies are trying to recruit Australian staff to work in Indonesia or similar countries with a lower HDI, they find it is quite challenging, and it is not an attractive option for Australians. As a result, business operating in lower HDI countries like Indonesia typically find it much easier and more efficient to hire locally, relying on Indonesian talent rather than foreigners from higher HDI countries like Australia. So for an Australian company thinking about setting up in Indonesia, focusing on human development is the key because it helps guarantee a productive workforce and growth in customer base. Human development covers important aspects like I mentioned in the previous pages, which directly impacts the company's ability to succeed and thrive in the long run. By prioritizing these factors, the firm can invest in people, reaping long-term benefits for both the business and the company, making Indonesia a more stable option for running business.
Indonesia and Australia, despite being geographically close, but still have distinct cultural differences, which can be understood using Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory. This theory helps explain how these two nations differ in social interactions, business practices, and decision-making. First of all, power distance. A major difference between Indonesia and Australia is their approach to power distance. In Indonesia, power distance is high, which means that society accepts an equal power distribution and respects authority. For example, in an Indonesian company, decisions are often made by senior managers or leaders, and employees are expected to follow orders without questioning them. Respect for elders and those in authority is deeply embedded in the culture. In contrast, Australia has a low power distance, where equality is valued, and power is more evenly distributed. For instance, in Australian workplaces, employees are encouraged to share their opinions and participate in decision-making process. This contrast shows how hierarchical structures in Indonesia differ from more egalitarian approach in Australia. Second, individualism and collectivism. Another key difference is in individualism and collectivism. Australia is highly individualistic, which means that individuals prioritize personal freedom and individual rights. For example, in Australian culture, a person might make decisions based on what benefits them personally, such as choosing a career path that aligns with their individual goals. Indonesia, however, is a collectivist society, where family and community are more important than personal interest. An Indonesian employee might prioritize family approval over personal ambition when making the career decisions. This is evident in social interactions as well, where Indonesians often place the group's needs above their own, whereas Australians tend to value self-reliance and personal success. Third, uncertainty and avoidance. Uncertainty and avoidance is also a key cultural dimension that differentiates these countries. Indonesia scores higher on this scale, which shows that a preference for avoiding uncertainty by sticking to traditional practice and established norms. For example, Indonesian businesses might prefer to follow long-standing business models and avoid taking risks. However, Australia is more open to change and innovation, scoring low in uncertainty. Avoidance Australia are often more willing to experiment with new business ideas and are generally more comfortable with uncertainty. This difference can be also seen in everyday life, where Australians are more likely to embrace new experiences, while Indonesians may be more cautious. Indonesia and Australia belong to different cultural clusters, with Indonesian emphasizing community and tradition, and Australia valuing individualism and practical approaches. This creates a psychic distance in communication and business practices, where Australians might view Indonesians as indirect, and Indonesian could find Australians too direct or confrontational. Although globalization is bringing the two cultures closer, particularly among the younger generations, their core values, Indonesia's focus on community and religion and Australia's emphasis on individualism and secularism remain distinct. While some blending may occur, these fundamental differences are likely to persist.
Hi, my name is Nicholas and I'll be explaining about the question 4, which is identify and explain which industry Indonesia should specialize in looking for a trade with other countries according to Adam Smith of absolute advantage theory and David Ricardo's of comparative advantage theory. Which theory should we follow when engaged in international trade? According to Adam Smith's theory of absolute advantage, a country should focus on manufacturing goods in areas where it has an absolute advantage. That is, when they can create goods in greater quantities with the same resources than another or a rival country. This advantage also means when a country can produce a good using fewer resources. Indonesia has the greatest strength of producing goods more efficiently than other countries in their natural resources, agriculture such as palm oil, rubber, coffee, tea, spices, coal, nickel, and other minerals. And in addition, their extensive coastline and marine biodiversity gives Indonesia an excellence of absolute advantage in their seafood production. The second theory is about David Ricardo's comparative advantage theory, which indicates that countries should specialize in goods or products according when they produce in their lowest opportunity cost. He focuses more on seeing the efficiency in producing some goods and sees the benefit of a trade as long as they specialize according to their comparative advantages. David Ricardo's theory in international trade is seeing based on if the country doesn't have an absolute advantage in producing any goods, meaning like it isn't the most efficient at producing any particular good compared to other countries, then it should specialize in producing the goods for which it has the lowest opportunity cost. Indonesia specializes on industries where it has a comparative advantage in producing goods with the lowest opportunity cost rather than other countries in textiles, clothing, footwear, tourism, labor cost, and natural resources because their labor costs tend to be more lower than other countries. As shown in the data below, between Indonesia and USA, there is a great amount of footwear, plastic or rubber, and vegetable being exported to USA, which means Indonesia can get another trade with USA, and they need their chemicals, food products, and textile clothing, transportation, which means like Indonesia is very great at having a comparative advantage and having a international trade with other countries such as Australia as well, such as to China as well. And they have a great amount of fruits, vegetables, fuel, coal, mines that are being transported, which gives Indonesia a great comparative advantage to have an international trade with other countries. So, which theories should Indonesia follow? For me, I can see like the greatest outcome is for Indonesia to have a comparative advantage based on its natural resources. Considering the diverse of Indonesian economy, it can maximize some Indonesian economic benefits on focusing in industries that have a comparative advantage like the local textile, furnitures, handicrafts, home decor, footwears, clothing, and tourism, agriculture, natural resources, even fisheries. And this theory also allows Indonesia to focus on industries that are more efficient for international trading. In a highly integrated global economy, countries are often interdependent, and the comparative advantage allows Indonesia to have an approach to participate in more diverse international trade relationship. The second one is this allows Indonesia to diversify its economy by having the comparative advantage of labor-intensive manufacturing and digital services. Indonesia reduced reliance on volatile commodity markets like for natural resources to stabilize its economy. The third one is specialization based on opportunity cost and boost GDP growth. Comparative advantage leads to more optimal use of natural resources and specialization based on its opportunity cost, increasing overall Indonesian economic welfare and potentially to boost GDP growth. And the last one is comparative advantage will allow Indonesia to adjust to shift in global demand and supply more dynamically than if it were only focused on absolute advantages. That's why Indonesia needs to follow the comparative advantage by David Ricardo.
Hi, my name is Eamonn, and I'll be presenting question 5, which is what trade policy instruments does your chosen country's government currently employ? Which theory or theories of international trade does this use of trade policy instrument support? And explain that using illustrated examples. In terms of Indonesia's current trade policy instruments, Indonesia employs not just specific and ad valorem tariffs, but also compound tariffs, which are a combination of both. Indonesia holds higher tariffs for agricultural goods than for non-agricultural goods. Figures from the World Trade Organization show that the simple most favored nation applied average rate on agricultural goods was 8.6% for agricultural goods and 7.9% for non-agricultural goods. The government also imposes greater tariffs on specific goods manufactured within Indonesia. So these goods include things like electronic products, milling machines, chemicals, cosmetics, medicines, alcohol, iron wire and wire nails, as well as a focus on agriculture. So the non-agricultural goods rate is bound at 47.1%, and the agricultural goods with the highest tariffs placed on them were beverages and tobacco at 81.3%, dairy products at 67.3%, and sugars and confectionery 58.3%, and rice in particular holds a 30% ad valorem tariff. You can see that they hold particularly high tariffs for those agricultural goods. Indonesia also employs the significant use of some subsidies, primarily for energy such as fossil fuels and as well as fertilizers, showing that continued focus on their agricultural industry. In January 2024, Argus Media reported that Indonesia's government was considering targeting a 17% increase in energy subsidies for this year, which would reach approximately 12 billion USD or 186.9 trillion Indonesian rupiah. That's a 17% increase from the year before. This report comes from the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, Arifin Tasrif, who stated that of the 186.9 trillion Indonesian rupiah, 113.3 trillion would likely to be used for oil and LPG, which is liquefied petroleum gas, and 73.6 trillion for electricity. It's noteworthy that a report published by the International Institute for Sustainable Development in 2011 actually showed that the wealthiest 10% of households in Indonesia consumed over 40% of the subsidized fuel, and the poorest 10% consumed less than 1% of that subsidized fuel. In 2023, Indonesian President Jokowi announced a decision of a 70% year-on-year increase for the fertilizer subsidies from 26.68 trillion Indonesian rupiah, about 1.7 billion USD, to 40.68 trillion Indonesian rupiah, about 2.6 billion USD. Indonesia also utilizes import quotas to limit the volume of specific goods being imported. So we can see that the continued agricultural focus in Indonesia's trade policy with the import quotas, particularly on rice and sugar. So as of 2024, Indonesia has an import quota on rice set at 2 million metric tons, which is a reduction from 2023. And as of 2023, Indonesia also acted an import quota of sugar at 3.6 million metric tons. Indonesia also utilizes import quotas to limit the volume of specific goods being imported. So we can see that the continued agricultural focus in Indonesia's trade policy with the import quotas, particularly on rice and sugar. So as of 2024, on this slide, you can just see the WTO figures on Indonesia's tariffs, and you've got the average of all of them there. So Indonesia's trade policies support several theories of international trade that are both classical and modern. So through Indonesia's steep tariffs on multiple goods, as well as the use of import quotas and large subsidies that benefit domestic manufacturing and agriculture, these policies follow a mercantilism trade of theory, and that's furthered by Indonesia's trade surplus that they've held for the past consecutive 49 months. Indonesia's trade policies also support the theory of comparative advantage. So as shown in slide 12 by Nicholas, we can see that Indonesia holds several agricultural comparative advantages, as well as in chemical products and fuels. Indonesia has utilized subsidies and tariffs to protect these industries, while they're still becoming more competitive in the international trade market. So this shows an alignment with the infant industry argument, which is a component of comparative advantage. It's also a component that supports the trade theory of Porter's diamond model of competitive advantage. Indonesia holds the basic factors necessary for them to compete in international production, for example, the natural resources for their exported fuels, and the government, through subsidies and tariffs, along with further investment, has allowed these basic factors to continue to grow.
Here are some references that we used. And that's all. Thank you for listening and watching our presentation.